Well, hey everybody. I'm Jan Erickson from Stepping Aside, and welcome to Somewhat Daily Tarot and Rune for the 5th day of April 2021. Well, my hibiscus is up. I already pulled those out of the little sites. I use one of those. I don't know. I think it's got like 12 rows or something, and they're super hard to get anything out of unless you use a fork. They're kind of in a, I think they've got 6 sides to them, and if you can stick your fork down one side and kind of, it has to be narrow enough, right? And you stick it down in and kind of tilt it just a smidge, you can pull the whole thing out. I found that out quite by accident one day when I was outside and not knowing what to do. I had a whole flat of marigolds that I had grown, and I was ready to transplant them. I couldn't get them out, and I didn't, and they were breaking. It was awful. And I had a bowl sitting out there by the greenhouse, had a fork in it, and because I forgot to bring it in the other day and the day before, and let's see, looks like my phone's ringing, so we'll turn that off. And I in frustration, I grabbed it, I did it, and I mean, I wouldn't use anything else now. So I don't know, but anyway, there I got those transplanted into something a little bit bigger, and let's see what else. I haven't had to transplant anything else, but I've been planting more things. I planted some chamomile. We've got Sawillow as our rune for today, and as above, so below rune, meaning it's a fire element. It's the will, creativity, source presence, clarity. But anyway, so we're doing that now, and we start irrigation today, assuming the water gets to our property today. I don't know. We'll see. We have flood irrigation, and I guess it's supposed to start today. And so 11:13, we go up and we'll see if we have water or not. If not, we'll just keep watching until it hits the property, and then we'll start filling the ponds and stuff first. But that's what we're doing right now. Oh, yes. Okay. So Carcer is the geomancy rune, and that's going to be self-imprisonment or restriction. Usually I like to see it that we're, I mean, here, so Sawillow would be very expansive and letting the light in, and Carcer is going to restrict us from moving around, or we're being restrictive in our perceptions or restrictive in our choices or something. So we'll take a look at the cards and see what they have to say. But I hope you know where you are. If you've got better weather, we're up at 3,000 feet above sea level, so everything pretty much happens inside until maybe the last week of April. But so nothing goes out yet, unless it's frosty or something. Then that's one thing. But otherwise, we can't put flowers out. We can't. You have to time, if you're going to plant in the ground, you got to time for it to come up after the last frost. So I don't plant beans until June 6th. That's a hard and fast rule. If I break it, I suffer the consequences and I have to replant. So not doing that. It's like, oh, they won't come out of the ground for another week. And then the next day they're up and it's like, oh no. So yeah, we just don't. We've learned the hard way not to do that. So we don't, until I do, and then kick myself for doing it. It costs me a bunch of emotion, a lot of tears, and so it's like, well, what's the point? So even though I'm planting my pole beans in a greenhouse now, I'm still not planting them until June 6th. So there you have it. I just can't take the stress. I can't take the stress. I don't know what it is. You fixate, I think, a gardener does on one particular plant, and if it fails, it's like your whole garden has failed, even though it hasn't. And for me, it's beans. So I don't know why. I don't. Let's take a look at the cards and see what we can add to Sawillow and Carcer. See, because I self-imprison myself, right, with my concept of how I do things, right? Well, anyway. All right. Well, we started out with the Lovers, 6th card of the Major Arcana, about polarity and balance, balancing the polarity within, balancing polarity with someone else. You also see that in the Two of Cups. Ace of Wands, which is the beginning of the fire element, and the small and the suit of wands, and the small cards in the minor arcana. The aces are said to contain all of the elements of the particular suit, or all of the, not the elements, but all of, well, you could say that, but all of the different messages of each of the cards is actually contained within all of this, because it's undeveloped potential. And here you see a hand reaching out from a cloud, which is typical of all of the aces in the Rider-Waite. And it bursts forth with creativity and the expression of will. The burst of creative ideas, even though ideas would technically be the air element, the spark of that creativity that then results in that. You see how they sort of all, follow one another, really. And then lastly, we have the Nine of Swords. Swords, again, is the air element. And this is the stuff of nightmares. But I have to say, everything is in order here. Even the quilt, the patterning on the quilt is redundant. It's in balance. It's the same. The squares are the same size. And here you have all of the nightmares, all of the perceptions that are no longer serving you. Organizing them all. They're just all there, coming down on you. It's just too much for this person. So the 9 is going to signify endings of sorts, all right? So the end to this sort of thing. Now, what we can do here, how about if we put the 9 first, and then I think we're going to be taking another card here. How about this? How about this? We're gonna associate Sewillow with the Ace of Wands, and the self-imprisonment is going to be the 9. Okay. We're going to use the 6 as a significator, which we can often do if we have a single. We can even do it if we have 2. Make them the significators of, in other words, the higher self-information that we need to use in order to deal with whatever the small cards are telling us. The small cards really are the details, the little itty bitty details of our lives, right? And then the major arcana cards, which includes the Lovers, those are the soul archetype cards. And so those are the major themes that we need to deal with in form when we're incarnated into physical form. That's what the major arcana basically talks about. And so here we have fundamental polarity. Now, but let's look at this here, because it's done in biblical terms. We see Adam and Eve. We see the 2 trees behind them, the tree of life or the tree of knowledge or whatever. Behind, well, actually it's tree of knowledge. Behind Eve, we see the serpent coiled around that. You see that, okay? And you see Adam. Behind him is an oak tree. It looks like an oak tree. Not particularly, big or anything, because they're all new in their expression here. You see a mountain in between them. You see clouds above the mountain. You see an angel resting on top of the clouds, and you see the rays of source presence, or the rays of the Creator, evidenced by the sun, expressing its rays in all directions above the angel's head. But I want you to take notice of something here, all right? The serpent on the tree of knowledge does not make, and because it was given to the woman, does not make the woman the weaker individual. It means that they gave that to her because she was the one that could handle it. I want you to look at where she's looking. She's looking toward heaven, isn't she? She's looking toward spirit. She's getting guidance from above, from higher self, from the angel, from the Creator. She's getting guidance from there. But where's he looking? He's looking at her. So the notion of patriarchy is a bunch of BS, in other words. It was never supposed to be that way. But the fact is that the man was so ego-driven, id-driven, if you will, instinct-driven. They had to give the information for healing, for magic, for farming, for everything to the woman, because she could understand, because she carried with her the seed of the future, basically, in terms of the children she could have. All right. And so they had to actually talk to her. It wasn't so much that, oh, because they were beautiful, it was that they would listen. And they would, because they had survival of the species within them. And so they wanted to know, how do I do this? How do I do that? How does this make this better? Okay. And that's what they did. They gave the information to her. So the notion of eating from the tree of knowledge, that was our survival. That wasn't a failing. Now, when we talk about the lovers, though, we're talking not necessarily, if you want to take it out to the broader understanding of it, we're talking polarity. So we're balancing the masculine and feminine within. Well, what are we talking about there? We're talking about balancing a projective sense versus a receptive sense, okay? That the best way to describe that is, some people have push auras. My husband has a push aura, and I have a drawing in aura or an enveloping aura. So I draw people in, he pushes. It's most evident, since I'm an empath, I feel that energetic transaction. And when he's standing above me, I've said this before on here, that if he's standing above me and leaning in at all, I feel that. And I've got it, and I'm like, and then if he notices, then he'll be like, oh crap. You know, he has to be, in other words, he knows about this, and he has to be mindful of the push energy, the push aura that he has. Okay? It projects, mine receives. So you can see where we have that kind of thing going on a lot of the time. And especially if he's irritated about something, you know, not at me, but just irritated about something, exasperated or frustrated or whatever, he has a tendency to do that. So that's really what we're talking about, this energetic balance. And where is our focus? And the receptive focus is on source presence. The receptive focus is on spirit. Okay? The receptive focus draws in spirit, whereas the ego side tends to be associated with the masculine or projective side. And again, this is not men versus women, because women, it doesn't matter. Men and women both have this balance within. All right. So, and it's not, there's nothing judgmental about that. No matter how you express that in your life, it's just you. All right. So I'm not making any judgment about good or bad here. This is simply that came later with the religious works that started putting value judgments on everything. And that was based on control of the population. All right. It wasn't based on truth, spiritual truth, or anything else. It was just based on the power, the people in power at the time who wanted to maintain control over the people. So, but once you come into balance, right? Once you rebalance that, your perceptions have to shift. And maybe you discover that from this moment, the nightmare moment where you've gone as far as you can go with what you believe, and it's all a bunch of nonsense, you realize it's not serving you. Your perceptions are not serving you anymore. They're keeping you up at night. They're making you do things that really, you know, maybe you're getting you arrested or something. You know, it reminds me of the insurrection on January 6th. Perceptions that do not serve those people, and yet there they were, complicating their lives, doing something that they should not have done, right? So that's one example, but here it's all getting into order, and you see the pattern of it. In other words, you're waking up from the nightmare, and you're holding your head and going, oh my God. But it's a result of an imbalance in polarity. Now, if we also want to look at this in terms of relationships with other people, this has led to a breakdown here. But again, the balance of the power leans toward the woman who gets her information from spirit. You see what I'm saying here? So depending on how you want to look at this card, if you want to look at that in terms of the polarity of our relationships with one another now, they're quite broken, aren't they? In many respects. And not simply because we can't see one another and hug one another because of the pandemic. It's because of the political situation that has resulted. And the lies that have been told to a group of people who have willingly believed, some of whom ended up in an insurrection on January 6th. All right? The stuff of nightmares that you got to let go of. let go of those perceptions to allow new creativity, allow new awakening to occur. So here we awaken from the nightmare of our perceptions that have probably been born out of, an improper balance of polarity, both within and without. Within in terms of who we are, and without in terms of our relationships with other people. Keep in mind, you see, what is it? There's an interesting example of it. Where is Governor Whitmer from? Is she Michigan, I think? So anyway, wherever she's from, I think it's Michigan, isn't it? Anyway, one of those states. She and other high-level people in the government are women. And so you've got somebody there in the GOP, someone who's high up in that party within that state, who's talking about witches and other things, calling them witches, which is actually a compliment from my standpoint. But hey, that's just me. But he's making comments that are hostile and aggressive. There was one other thing, and I'm not going to say it because I'm not exactly sure of the word, but it's not good, right? And this guy needs to be called on the carpet for it. And I don't know if that's happened yet, but here's a perfect example of how clearly a man is not comfortable with women in power. And if women are in power, whatever they do is obviously wrong. But you see, in this card, it explains women are looking towards spirit. Women are looking toward the greater good and dealing with things that way. They're not necessarily, but they can be now. It's not that a woman, again, this is not gender oriented, really. It's not that a woman cannot possess that type of projective, type of single focused service to self, maybe type of idea, because they can. All right. But in this particular example, it's the classic men versus women, and women can't do a doggone thing because they're women, right? And we can't have that, right? So they fight her every step of the way, except that she's doing good things for the people in that state. Even the ones that think she's not, it's not true. She is. And she's doing everything in her power to keep people safe in that state, right? And it's tough. But there you have a perfect example, I think, of where projective and receptive energies are colliding, because you've got a guy who can't pull his head out of his you-know-where long enough to understand that this is not about her being a woman and him being a guy, but it's that there's not a Republican as the governor. But we want to go to those old stereotypes and everything else and try to draw that sort of anger and judgment out of people in that state. So they see her as a nasty old witch and all of that, when she's not. Witches aren't nasty. Witches are healers. You see? So sorry, he doesn't understand that. So he doesn't understand he's actually paying them a compliment. She's a powerful lawmaker. She's a powerful governor. And she's not afraid to exercise that power. She's doing it for the betterment of the state. So she's doing her job, in other words. Whereas this guy can't seem to do his. He's too focused on her. Ooh. Yeah. Let's do one more card. But see, the Ace of Wands is going to express the clarity of and strength of spirit that Sewillow brings. All right. And here you see this as above, so below. You have kind of skewed kinas in the top and the bottom here. So the torch or the light. And then you see that horizontal line there in the center. It's almost like that's the line of the abyss, where you come down into form through that. And that's what Sewillow reminds me of. And so it's really the invoking of spirit into whatever you're doing, into your creativity, into your will, making that not be, in other words, you're balancing the receptive and the projective within that moment. All right. When you draw spirit into whatever your creation is, to whatever fiery kinds of things that you're doing, that you're manifesting. This is about manifestation. So you're, in this case, you're drawing spirit into that when you're using Sawillo. When you're aligning Sawillo with that, you're drawing spirit into that manifestation. And here we have another card of the fire element, the Six of Wands, where we have that cute little horse there who's looking at us, going, hi. But we have the king, likely, or a prince or somebody, coming back from somewhere, either battle or maybe a meeting or something, where some victory happened, because you see the wreath around his head and again around his staff right here. You see everybody else walking along with him in the same direction. So here we're going forward in shared purpose. So we've evidently been able to balance the polarity within, and we're a whole lot more comfortable with the idea of men and women functioning together, if you will, or the masculine and feminine within. Balancing together in a better way, that we can then exercise our will in a creative fashion, that instead of being at loggerheads with one another, we're now going forward we've let go of the restriction of Karser. I forgot to mention that. And remember, we're aligning that with the Nine of Swords here. So Karser, self-imprisonment, right? And the Nine. Don't they align well? I think so. So we're no longer imprisoning ourselves by our perceptions. We're allowing our polarity to come back into a better balance, being comfortable with who we are, being comfortable with other people, and then having new creative, the spark of new creativity and of new will being invoked on a shared path, lighted by spirit, invoked by spirit, on a new shared path together. So that's pretty cool. I'll have to write that down so we can talk about it again on Thursday and see if we have turned another corner like we did last week. We did the two readings last week were not related really to one another. I think that we did turn a corner after Monday's reading, and we did something a little bit different on Thursday. We'll see if we do that again this week. If maybe there's more, in other words, will Thursday's reading build on the idea of no longer engaging in a bunch of self-restriction? Okay, and getting in the way of ourselves and perceptions that just bog us down in a bunch of conflict that we don't need. Getting back into some kind of a reasonable interaction with other people instead of this us versus them nonsense that's been going on for the last 4+ years. It was an illusion that was and a spell that was cast over certain people. That's what this was. And they were vulnerable enough to the message. Some of it parroted their own concerns, their own fears. And unfortunately, a lot of it was conspiracy based. Well, probably most of it. And so it's not true. Unfortunately, you've got a whole lot of people now that seem to want to align with that. And it's caused great pain in their families. It's caused great pain in their relationships with other people. It's like you're watching someone go down a rabbit hole and you can't stop them. That's what this is. Many of them were there on the 6th at the insurrection. So you can see where that sort of conspiracy thinking, if you truly believe that's the truth, well, then it's going to motivate you to do things maybe. And you've got people behind the scenes that were working them and manipulating them to do just that. And that's what we're seeing right now. So what needs to happen now, and I think we're kind of seeing it in the cards, well, in one fashion or another, and also in the runes, that we need to let go of perceptions that don't serve us in terms of the collective consciousness of who we are together. When we're not informed, we're unfocused energy that's part of the creator. We're one. And we only, separate out into points of light, basically, which is each of our souls. when we focus into form, to then bring that information of what was that that life like? What was your life like? What did you learn? What did you learn? What are we bringing back to the Akashic record, to the collective consciousness of information that is shared in spirit, you know? So that's what I think that we're dealing with right now, is the issues of that. And I know that's kind of ooey and big and all of that, but I think that's what we're dealing with. So with the ultimate goal, though, here of working that out so we can get back on a shared path together. But it's going to take time. So anyhow, I guess that's it. Check out the blog. This will be up on the side panel as soon as I look at it. Also post over here on YouTube. And check out the Patreon page. Join for $1 a month if you'd like to do that. I'd love you to do that, actually. And check out my work over on Medium as well. Look for that. There's daily astrology that goes up Monday through Friday there. Plus I cross-post stuff over there. I'm sort of feeling like I want to do another tarot reading separate from this week, so look for that on the blog. I don't know what day that'll go up, maybe Wednesday. Or I might do a rune divination. I don't know. I'm thinking about starting a series. I'm just trying to figure out what it is. But anyway, look for that. And click subscribe here. I'd love you to do that and come back on Thursday and join us again as we look at how tarot and runes can impact and enhance our lives. So anyhow, wear a mask if you go out around anyone at all, whether you're inside or out, and for a while longer, even if you got your vaccinations. And be good to yourself, be good to one another, and blessed be.